My name is Rudolph, and at 68 years old, I never expected to be fighting for my own home. After my wife passed, I thought living alone in our dream house would be my biggest challenge. Then came that Sunday dinner when my son-in-law, Jeff, casually announced his parents were moving into my guest wing tomorrow, without even asking me. The look on his face when I handed them my welcome package still brings a smile to my face. If you have ever dealt with entitled family members who think your boundaries are just suggestions, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to hear how this played out. I spent 40 years building my construction company from nothing. Started with just a pickup truck, some tools, and determination back in the 70s. By the time I retired at 65, Rudolph Johnson Construction had become one of the most respected mid-sized builders in our county. We specialized in custom homes, the kind that families save their whole lives for. I put my heart into every project, treated each house like I was building it for myself. That work ethic paid off. Elaine, my wife of 40 years, and I were able to build our own dream home 15 years ago. 5,000 square feet of thoughtful design on 2 acres just outside the city. Not ostentatious, but comfortable, with separate wings so we could have privacy when family visited. Elaine insisted on that feature. "Family is wonderful, Rudy," she would say, "but everyone needs their own space." How right she was. Elaine was the love of my life. High school sweethearts who grew up together. She handled the books for my company and raised our daughter Amanda. When cancer took her 3 years ago, the house felt impossibly empty. Every room held memories. Her garden in the backyard, the kitchen where she would bake those incredible apple pies, the study where we would sit in the evenings, just talking about our day. Living alone at my age has its challenges. Some days the silence is deafening. But this was our dream, our home. I had adjusted to my new normal, joined a widowers support group, started volunteering at the community center teaching woodworking, kept myself busy with projects around the house. I was doing okay. Amanda, our only child, has always been the light of my life. 35 now, she followed her mother into education, became an elementary school teacher, has her mother's patience and kindness. Sometimes too kind, if I am being honest, always wanting to please everyone, avoid conflict. As a child, she would give away her toys if another kid looked at them longingly. Elaine and I tried to teach her about healthy boundaries, but some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Amanda met Jeff 4 years ago at a colleague's birthday party. He works in pharmaceutical sales, though, from what I gathered, without much success. Always talking about the next big break, the next promotion that never seems to materialize. When they first started dating, I noticed his charm. Handsome guy, good conversationalist, seemed to make Amanda happy. But there were little things that gave me pause. How he would order for her at restaurants without asking what she wanted. The way he spoke about his connections and influence that never quite aligned with reality. They married 2 years ago, about a year after Elaine passed. Small ceremony. I was still deep in grief, but put on a brave face for my daughter. Jeff's parents, Harold and Diane, attended, of course. Seemed nice enough, if a bit loud. Harold had been laid off from his management position at a manufacturing plant that closed, and they had downsized to an apartment. Throughout the reception, they kept commenting on how beautiful my home was, how spacious, how wasted on just one person. I shrugged it off as reception small talk. Over the next 2 years, I saw patterns emerging in Jeff's behavior. Small boundary crossings that seemed innocent enough at first, borrowing my tools without asking and returning them damaged, showing up unannounced for dinner, making comments about my retirement savings, asking surprisingly detailed questions about my will and estate planning. Each time, I would gently reset the boundary, and each time, he would act surprised, as if I was being unreasonable. My house became my sanctuary after Elaine died. The East Wing has the master bedroom and my home office. The West Wing has 3 guest bedrooms, a bathroom, and a small kitchenette. It was designed for extended family stays, allowing everyone privacy. The central area has the kitchen, living room, and a sunroom that overlooks Elaine's garden, which I still maintain. Every inch of this place holds meaning for me. It is not just real estate. It is the physical manifestation of a lifetime of hard work and love. Financially, the house represents most of my retirement security. Property values in our area have tripled since we built it. I have a good pension from my company and some investments, but like many in my generation, the home equity is my safety net, something to fall back on if I ever needed assisted living or extended medical care. Not that I wanted to think about those possibilities, but at 68, you have to be practical. I had noticed Jeff becoming more interested in the house over recent months. Comments about what a gold mine the property would be if subdivided. Questions about whether I ever thought about downsizing now that you are all alone. Each comment felt like a small paper cut, individually insignificant, but they were adding up. Amanda would visit at least once a week, sometimes with Jeff, sometimes alone. Our Sunday dinners became a tradition after Elaine passed, a way to maintain family connection. I would cook her favorite pot roast, just like her mother used to make. Those Sundays were the highlight of my week, a chance to hear about her students, her life, to feel connected to something beyond my quiet existence. Looking back, all the signs were there. I just did not want to see them, did not want to believe my son-in-law could be calculating rather than caring, did not want to create conflict for Amanda, who so desperately wanted everyone to get along. Sometimes we ignore red flags because acknowledging them would force us to take action, and taking action is much harder than pretending everything is fine. It was the first Sunday in October. Fall had arrived with its crisp air and colorful leaves. I had spent the morning raking the front yard, thinking how Elaine always loved this time of year. The smell of pot roast filled the house as I prepared for our weekly dinner. Amanda had texted that they would arrive around 5, and I had everything ready by 4:30. The table was set for 3 in the dining room, the one we only used for special occasions when Elaine was alive. Using it for these Sunday dinners made them feel important, ceremonial. They arrived right on time. Amanda brought a bottle of wine and a homemade apple pie. Not as good as her mother's, but the effort touched me. Jeff carried nothing but his phone, which he checked constantly throughout the evening. After hugs and greetings, we sat down to eat. The conversation started normally. Amanda talked about a difficult parent at school. Jeff mentioned a new territory he might get at work. I shared stories about my woodworking class at the community center. The pot roast was perfect, falling apart with minimal effort from a fork. 3 hours in the slow cooker, just like Elaine taught me. It was during dessert when the conversation shifted. Jeff looked around the dining room, then out toward the living room, nodding to himself as if confirming some private calculation. "This place really is huge for just one person, Rudolph," he said casually, cutting into his pie. I noticed Amanda tense slightly beside him, a subtle straightening of her posture that most would miss. But a father notices these things. "It is a big house," I acknowledged, "but it keeps me busy. Always something to maintain. Must be expensive too," Jeff continued. "Heating, cooling, property taxes on a place this size." He whistled low. "Must eat into your retirement fund pretty significantly." "I manage fine," I said, keeping my tone light. "Built this place to be efficient. Solar panels help with the electricity." Amanda jumped in, clearly trying to change the subject. "Dad, this pie crust recipe is still giving me trouble. Too flaky. Mom made it look so easy." But Jeff wasn't finished. He put down his fork and leaned forward. "Actually, Rudolph, there's something we wanted to discuss with you." The "we" caught my attention immediately. I glanced at Amanda, whose eyes were now fixed on her plate. She didn't look up. "My parents' apartment complex is being converted to condos," Jeff continued. "They can't afford to buy their unit, so they have to be out by the end of the month." "That's unfortunate," I said carefully. "Housing market is tough right now. Have they found a new place?" Jeff smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "That's the thing. They're having trouble finding anywhere in their price range. Everything's so expensive these days." The direction of this conversation was becoming clear, but I waited for him to actually say the words. Amanda still hadn't looked up from her plate. "Your guest wing is just sitting there empty," Jeff said, gesturing toward the west side of the house. "It's perfect for them. 2 bedrooms, private bathroom, Even that little kitchenette, they wouldn't have to bother you at all. I took a slow sip of my water, gathering my thoughts. That's a big step, Jeff. How long are we talking about? Just until they get back on their feet, he said quickly. 6 months, maybe a year tops. They're still looking for something permanent. I looked at Amanda, who finally met my eyes. There was apology there, and something else. Surprise. It dawned on me that perhaps this wasn't a joint proposal. Amanda, what do you think about this? I asked directly. Before she could answer, Jeff cut in. Amanda agrees it's the most logical solution. Family helps family, right? That's what Elaine would want. The mention of my late wife's name in this context felt manipulative, but I kept my expression neutral. This is a big decision. I'd need to think about it, talk to them directly. Jeff's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Actually, there isn't much time for deliberation. They need to be out by this weekend. This weekend? I repeated. That's very sudden. They just got the final notice yesterday, Jeff said, though something in his tone suggested this wasn't entirely true. Look, it's already decided. They're moving in tomorrow. I told them it wouldn't be a problem. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda looked horrified, confirming my suspicion that she hadn't been fully informed of this plan. You told them they could move in without discussing it with me first? I kept my voice level despite the anger bubbling up inside me. Come on, Rudolph. It's not like you're using that space. What's the big deal? They're family. Jeff. Amanda finally found her voice. You can't just tell your parents they can move into Dad's house without asking him. Jeff turned to her, irritation flashing across his face. I thought we discussed this. Your dad has all this extra space. My parents need a place. It's the obvious solution. We discussed maybe asking him, Amanda said, her voice small but firm, not telling him they're moving in tomorrow. Jeff turned back to me, his expression smoothing into something resembling contrition, though it didn't reach his eyes. Look, I may have jumped the gun a bit, but they're really in a bind. They've already started packing, just for a few months, until they find their own place. I took a deep breath, thinking of what Elaine would do in this situation. She was always better at these delicate family moments. I understand they're in a difficult position, but this is a significant imposition that requires proper discussion and boundaries. Let me sleep on it, and we can talk tomorrow. Jeff's facade of politeness slipped. There's nothing to sleep on. They're coming tomorrow with the moving truck. I've already given them keys. Keys? I asked, genuinely shocked. What keys? The spare set Amanda has, he said dismissively. Look, it's happening. I'm sure once they're settled in, you'll see it's not a big deal. They'll stay in their wing. You stay in yours. The dinner ended shortly after that bombshell. Amanda apologized repeatedly as they were leaving, saying she had no idea Jeff had gone this far. Jeff, for his part, seemed smugly confident as they walked to their car. He turned back to me just before getting in. We'll be here around 10 tomorrow with their stuff. Have the guest wing ready. It wasn't a request. As I closed the door behind them, the shock gave way to anger. This was my house, my sanctuary, and my son-in-law had just staged what amounted to a hostile takeover. I stood in the foyer, breathing deeply, trying to calm the racing of my heart. This wasn't just about uninvited house guests. This was about respect, boundaries, and apparently, a calculated plan to insert his parents into my home without proper discussion or consent. As I cleared the dinner dishes, I realized this would be a defining moment in our family relationship. How I responded would set the tone for years to come. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake in the bedroom Elaine and I had shared for 15 years, staring at the ceiling. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed every hour, marking the passage of a seemingly endless night. My mind raced with conflicting emotions and potential responses to Jeff's ultimatum. Part of me wanted to simply change the locks and refuse entry when they arrived. Another part worried about the impact on my relationship with Amanda. She was caught in the middle of this, clearly uncomfortable with her husband's tactics, but also tied to him by marriage and loyalty. I thought about what Elaine would advise. She had always been my moral compass, the voice of reason when my temper threatened to get the best of me. "Strength doesn't always look like confrontation, Rudy," she would say. "Sometimes it looks like setting clear boundaries with love." Around 3 in the morning, I got up and made myself a cup of tea. Sitting at the kitchen table, I reflected on the pattern of behavior that had led to this moment. Jeff's encroachments had been gradual, testing boundaries in small ways before this major violation. There was the time he borrowed my vintage fishing rods for a weekend trip with clients, returning them damaged and shrugging it off as wear and tear. The birthday when he announced they would host a party at my house because their apartment was too small, giving me just 2 days' notice. The uncomfortable conversations about my will, suggesting I should leave the house to Amanda to avoid estate taxes, though I suspected his interest had little to do with tax efficiency. Each incident seemed minor in isolation, not worth creating family tension over. But together, they formed a pattern of disrespect and boundary pushing that had culminated in this outrageous presumption about his parents moving in. At 4:30, I called Thomas, my friend of 40 years and former business partner. I knew he would be up. Thomas had been a commercial fisherman before joining my construction business, and he still kept those early hours. "They're doing what?" he exclaimed after I explained the situation. "And the son-in-law just announced this at dinner? No discussion?" "That's right," I confirmed. "They're arriving at 10 this morning with a moving truck." "So what are you going to do?" Thomas asked. "You can't let them steamroll you like this. That's why I'm calling. I need perspective." Thomas didn't hesitate. "You need to stand your ground, Rudy. If you cave on this, you're setting yourself up for more of the same. Next thing you know, they'll be redecorating your bedroom while you're out grocery shopping." "I don't want to damage my relationship with Amanda," I said, voicing my biggest concern. "Think about it this way," Thomas reasoned. "What kind of relationship will you have if you become a doormat? Amanda needs to see her father stand up for himself. That husband of hers needs a reality check before he does more damage to your family." After we hung up, I sat with my cold tea, thinking about Thomas's advice. He was right. This wasn't just about me or my comfort. It was about establishing healthy dynamics in our family going forward. By 6 o'clock, I had formulated a plan, one that would allow me to maintain my boundaries without completely shutting the door on Jeff's parents, who might genuinely be in need. I would be firm, but fair, clear, but not cruel. I showered, dressed, and was at my lawyer's office when they opened at 8. Barbara had handled my business contracts for decades and now managed my personal legal affairs. I explained the situation, and she immediately understood the implications. "We need to protect you legally," she said, pulling up documents on her computer. "If they establish residency in your home without clear terms, getting them out could become a legal nightmare." For the next hour, we drafted a formal month-to-month rental agreement with clear terms. Market rate rent for the space, utilities split proportionally, explicit house rules regarding common areas, noise, and guests, a 30-day probationary period, security deposit requirements, 30-day notice provision for either party to terminate. "This protects everyone," Barbara assured me as she printed the documents. "It sets clear expectations and gives you legal recourse if things don't work out." Next, I stopped at the bank and opened a separate account for rental income. I wanted everything documented and above board. No one could accuse me of being unfair if I had proper paperwork and organization. I returned home by 9:30 and quickly prepared the guest wing. I removed personal items and family photos, storing them safely in my bedroom. I made sure the space was clean and functional, but not particularly welcoming. Basic linens on the beds, towels in the bathroom, but none of the homey touches Elaine would have added for welcomed guests. In my office, I drafted a welcome note to accompany the rental agreement. Polite, but firm. I made 3 copies of everything and put them in professional-looking folders. Finally, I called a locksmith and arranged to have all external locks changed later that afternoon. If this arrangement proceeded, Jeff's parents would get new keys, but only after signing the agreement. If it didn't proceed, I needed to ensure Jeff couldn't use Amanda's spare keys to let himself or others in without permission. I also set up small security cameras in the common areas of the house. with a monitor in my bedroom. Not in the guest wing, as I respected privacy, but in areas where I needed to know who was coming and going in my home. By the time I heard vehicles pulling into my driveway at 10:15, I was calm, prepared, and resolved. This would not be a confrontation. It would be a business negotiation. I had spent my career making tough but fair deals. This would be no different. Through the front window, I watched Jeff directing a moving truck to park. Behind it was his SUV with what I assumed were his parents inside. He hadn't brought Amanda, I noticed. Probably didn't want her reasonable nature interfering with his plan. I straightened my shoulders, picked up my prepared folders, and went to the front door. Whatever happened next would set the tone for my future relationship with my daughter's in-laws and, possibly, with my daughter herself. I was ready. The doorbell rang at precisely 10:20. I took one final deep breath and opened the door with a neutral expression. Jeff stood there with an older couple I recognized from the wedding. Harold, in his early 70s, had the same sharp features as his son but with a full head of white hair. Diane, perhaps 5 years younger, wore an expensive-looking blouse that couldn't quite hide the extra weight around her midsection. Both had the entitled expression of people who expected to be accommodated without question. "Dad," Jeff said, not bothering with pleasantries. "These are my parents, Harold and Diane. They're moving in today." The casual way he said it, as if announcing they were staying for coffee, made my blood pressure rise slightly, but I maintained my composure. "Good morning," I said politely, extending my hand to Harold. "We met at the wedding, but it's been a while." Harold shook my hand with a limp grip. "Nice place you have here. Jeff says the West Wing is all set up for us." "Ah, about that," I said, smiling pleasantly. "Why don't you all come inside so we can discuss the arrangements?" Jeff frowned slightly. "There's nothing to discuss. We need to start unloading their furniture." "Actually, there is quite a bit to discuss," I countered, maintaining my pleasant tone. "Please, come in." Reluctantly, they followed me into the living room. I noticed Harold and Diane looking around, mentally placing their belongings in my space. Diane ran a finger along a side table as if checking for dust. "Beautiful home," she said. "Too big for just one person, though. Jeff said you rattle around in here all by yourself." "It's the perfect size for my needs," I replied evenly. "Please, have a seat." I gestured to the sofa and chairs. They sat, Jeff perching impatiently on the edge of an armchair. "Look, Rudolph, the movers are charging by the hour. We need to get started. Before anything is unloaded, we need to establish clear parameters," I said, retrieving the folders from the side table. "I've taken the liberty of preparing some paperwork." "Paperwork?" Jeff's voice rose slightly. "What paperwork? They're just staying in your empty guest rooms. They're moving in, according to you," I corrected him. "That constitutes a landlord-tenant relationship, which requires proper documentation." I handed each of them a folder. Inside, you'll find a standard rental agreement, along with house rules and expectations. The look of shock on their faces was immediate. Harold opened his folder first, scanning the top page with increasingly furrowed brows. "What is this?" he demanded. $1,800 a month? For family? "That's the current market rate for a 2-bedroom apartment in this area," I explained calmly. "I had a realtor friend provide comparables to ensure the price is fair." Diane was looking through her copy now, her face growing increasingly flushed. "Utilities? Security deposit? This is ridiculous. We're not strangers renting an apartment. We're family." "Family respects boundaries," I replied, my voice still pleasant but firm. "Family asks before making major impositions. Family doesn't show up with a moving truck and announce they're taking over part of someone's home." Jeff stood up, his face reddening. "This is how you treat my parents? After everything Amanda and I have done for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "What exactly have you done for me, Jeff? I'm genuinely curious." He sputtered for a moment. "We check on you. We bring you groceries sometimes. We make sure you're not alone all the time." "Amanda does those things," I corrected gently, "and I appreciate her for it. You, on the other hand, have primarily taken from me my tools, my time, my peace of mind. And now you want to take part of my home without so much as a proper conversation. Harold was reading further into the agreement now. 30-day probationary period, monthly inspections, no overnight guests without prior approval. What kind of prison are you running here? Not a prison, I said. A private home with reasonable boundaries. The same boundaries any landlord would establish with new tenants. We're not tenants, Diane nearly shouted. We're your daughter's in-laws, and I'm willing to rent to you on that basis, I replied. Many landlords wouldn't rent to someone with no current income and questionable credit. I'm making an exception because of our connection through Amanda. Jeff was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. This is extortion. You're taking advantage of their vulnerable situation. I laughed, genuinely amused by the irony. I'm taking advantage? You announced they were moving in without asking me. You gave them keys to my house without permission. You scheduled movers without consulting me. And I'm the one taking advantage? The three of them exchanged glances, clearly not having expected this response. They had anticipated either complete capitulation or angry refusal. My calm, businesslike approach had thrown them off balance. Here's the situation, I continued. I'm willing to rent the guest wing to Harold and Diane under the terms outlined in that agreement. First month's rent and security deposit due before they move in. Alternatively, they can find other accommodations. Those are the only two options on the table. This is insane, Jeff sputtered. They don't have that kind of money right now. Then perhaps this isn't the right housing solution for them, I suggested. There are many apartments in the area with lower rent than what I'm offering, but nowhere available immediately, Harold interjected, his tone slightly less hostile than before. He was beginning to realize their position wasn't as strong as they had assumed. That's unfortunate, but not my problem to solve, I said firmly. Your housing emergency doesn't constitute my emergency, especially when I wasn't consulted before plans were made. Diane was getting teary now. A tactic I suspected wasn't entirely genuine. Where are we supposed to go? Sleep in our car? You have options, I said. Extended stay hotels, short-term rentals, friends, other family members. Had you approached this situation with respect and proper communication, I might have offered a discounted rate or temporary arrangement while you figured things out. But the way this was handled eliminated that possibility. Jeff pulled out his phone. I'm calling Amanda. She'll set you straight. Feel free, I said calmly. I have nothing to hide from my daughter. In fact, I think she should be part of this conversation. While Jeff stepped away to make his call, Harold leaned forward. Look, Rudolph, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Jeff told us you had already agreed to this arrangement. That confirmed my suspicion that Jeff had been manipulating both sides of this equation. I see. Well, he misrepresented the situation to you, just as he misrepresented it to me. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change where we stand now. We really are in a bind, Diane said, her tone softening. The condo conversion caught us by surprise, and housing prices have skyrocketed. I understand that's stressful, I acknowledged. But moving into someone's home is a significant ask that requires proper discussion and agreement from all parties. Not an announcement in a moving truck. Jeff returned, looking smugly triumphant. Amanda's on her way. She's leaving work early to sort this out. Good, I said sincerely. She should be included in this conversation. She can't believe you're treating her family this way, Jeff added, clearly trying to make me feel guilty. We'll see what she has to say when she arrives, I replied, unperturbed. For the next 30 uncomfortable minutes, we sat in strained silence. Harold continued reading through the rental agreement with growing resignation. Diane alternated between sniffling and shooting me reproachful looks. Jeff checked his watch repeatedly and texted frantically. When Amanda finally arrived, her face was flushed and her eyes worried. She rushed in, looking between us all anxiously. Dad, what's going on? Jeff says you're refusing to help his parents. That's not accurate, I said calmly. I'm willing to rent the guest wing to them at market rate, with proper documentation and boundaries. What I'm refusing to do is allow them to move in rent-free with no parameters. especially given how this situation was presented to me. I handed her a copy of the rental agreement. She read through it quickly, her expression shifting from concern to understanding. "This seems reasonable, actually," she said cautiously. "But Jeff said they can't afford market rent right now." "Then perhaps they should explore other options," I suggested. "Options that should have been explored before announcing they were moving into my home." Jeff stepped forward, putting his arm around Amanda. "Your father is being ridiculous. They're family. They need help. This is the Christian thing to do." Amanda looked uncomfortable. "I understand both perspectives. Dad values his space and routines, and this was sprung on him very suddenly." "Suddenly is right," I agreed. "Last night at dinner, with a moving truck arriving this morning." Amanda turned to Jeff, confusion in her eyes. "You told me you were going to ask Dad about this weeks ago. You said he was considering it." Jeff's expression faltered momentarily. "I was waiting for the right time to bring it up formally. The right time was apparently after the moving truck was scheduled," I noted dryly. "It wasn't like that," Jeff insisted, but his confident facade was cracking. "Things moved quickly with my parents' situation. Decisions had to be made. Decisions about my home," I emphasized. "Without my input or consent." Amanda was looking increasingly troubled. "Jeff, did you tell your parents Dad had already agreed to this?" Harold answered before Jeff could. "He said it was all arranged, that you both had discussed it with Rudolph, and he was happy to help." Amanda's face fell. "That's not true. We never discussed any details. Just the possibility of asking Dad if they could stay temporarily. I had no idea they were moving in today." The truth was emerging, and Jeff knew it. His strategy shifted from confidence to anger. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Your father is being selfish and greedy. He lives alone in this massive house, while my parents are facing homelessness. And he wants to charge them nearly $2,000 a month to use space he's not even using." "I'm being pragmatic," I corrected, "and establishing necessary boundaries." I turned to Harold and Diane. "I'll give you 1 hour to decide. Either accept the terms of the rental agreement, with first month and deposit due before anything is unloaded, or find alternative arrangements. The movers can wait in the driveway until you decide." Jeff's face contorted with rage. "You heartless old man. This is how you treat family?" "Jeff!" Amanda exclaimed, shocked at his tone. But he was just getting started. "We've been waiting for you to move to a retirement community or assisted living. This house is wasted on you. My parents could live here. We could move into the main part, and everything would make sense." The room went silent. Amanda stared at her husband in horror. Harold and Diane looked mortified, suggesting this had indeed been discussed among them previously. "I see," I said quietly. "So this was never about helping your parents through a temporary housing crisis. It was about infiltrating my home as the first step toward pushing me out entirely." "That's not what I meant," Jeff backpedaled, realizing he had revealed too much. "It's exactly what you meant," I replied. "And it explains a lot about your recent interest in my property and estate planning." Amanda stepped away from Jeff, tears forming in her eyes. "Is that true? Have you been planning to take over Dad's house?" Jeff's silence was damning. "I think we've reached the point of clarity," I said, standing up. "Harold, Diane, I sympathize with your housing situation, but this arrangement isn't going to work. I'll need you to leave now." "Dad," Amanda began, her voice shaking. "It's okay, sweetheart," I assured her. "This isn't your fault, but I need to be firm about this boundary." Jeff wasn't finished. He stepped closer to me, his voice low and threatening. "You'll regret this. Amanda is all you have left. How do you think she'll feel when I tell her we can't visit anymore? When her future children can't know their grandfather because he was too selfish to help family in need?" Amanda gasped. "Jeff, that's a horrible thing to say." "It's the truth," he insisted. "Either he accepts my parents or he loses his daughter. His choice." I looked at my son-in-law, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time. "That's where you're wrong, Jeff. You don't get to make that ultimatum. Amanda is an adult who makes her own decisions about her relationships. I turned to Amanda, whose face was streaked with tears. I love you, sweetheart. Nothing will ever change that. Whatever you decide about your marriage and your relationship with me going forward, my door is always open to you. But I will not be manipulated or bullied in my own home. Harold stood up, placing a restraining hand on his son's arm. That's enough, Jeff. We'll figure something else out. He turned to me with a nod. Sorry for the misunderstanding. We'll be going now. Diane followed her husband's lead, gathering her purse and the folder I had given her. Jeff told us this was all arranged, she said quietly. We wouldn't have come otherwise. Jeff wasn't ready to concede. You're both just going to give up? Let him win? This isn't about winning, Harold said tiredly. We overstepped. He's within his rights. The three of them moved toward the door, Jeff still fuming. Amanda lingered, caught between following her husband and staying to talk with me. Go with them for now, I told her gently. Take some time to process everything. We'll talk when you're ready. She nodded, gave me a quick hug, and followed the others out. Through the window, I watched as Jeff directed the moving truck to leave, gesticulating wildly and clearly still angry. Harold and Diane got into their car silently. Amanda stood apart from them all, her arms wrapped around herself as if cold. As they drove away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that I had held my ground, sadness for the pain this would cause Amanda, anger at Jeff's manipulation and entitlement, but mostly, a quiet resolve that I had done the right thing, even though it had been difficult. I called the locksmith and confirmed he was still coming that afternoon. Then I poured myself a small glass of whiskey, sat in Elaine's garden, and contemplated what the future might hold. I had stood my ground, but at what cost? Only time would tell. For 3 days, I heard nothing from Amanda or Jeff. The silence was deafening. I called her once, leaving a voicemail expressing my love and concern, but received no response. I tried to go about my normal routines, volunteering at the community center, tending to Elaine's garden, working on a birdhouse project in my workshop, but my thoughts constantly drifted to Amanda and the fallout from our confrontation. On the 4th day, my doorbell rang around 6 in the evening. Through the security camera I had installed, I saw Amanda standing alone on the porch, her posture tense. I hurried to open the door. Hi, Dad, she said quietly, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Amanda. I pulled her into a hug, which she returned stiffly. Come in, please. She entered but remained standing in the foyer, as if uncertain of her welcome. I can't stay long. Jeff doesn't know I'm here. My heart sank at those words. Would you like some tea, or something stronger? She shook her head. I just came to talk about what happened. We moved to the living room, sitting across from each other awkwardly. This was my daughter, the little girl I had taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose graduation I had cheered at. Now we were like cautious strangers. Jeff is furious, she began. He says you humiliated his parents and him. I'm sorry if they felt humiliated, I said carefully. That wasn't my intent. I only wanted to establish clear boundaries after they were violated. He says you're selfish, that you could easily help but you're choosing not to. I took a deep breath. Amanda, do you understand what actually happened here? Your husband told his parents they could move into my home without my permission. He gave them keys without asking me. He scheduled movers without consulting me. Then he announced this fait accompli at dinner, expecting me to simply accept it. Amanda looked down at her hands. I know. He shouldn't have done that. Then he revealed that his actual plan was to eventually move me out of my own home so that he could take it over. Is that something you knew about? She looked up, tears filling her eyes again. No. I swear, Dad. I had no idea he was thinking that way. When he first mentioned his parents might need temporary housing, I suggested they could maybe stay in the guest room for a few weeks. That's all. I never imagined this. I believed her. Amanda had always been honest to a fault. I know, sweetheart. I don't blame you for any of this, but I'm stuck in the middle, she said, her voice breaking. He's my husband. They're his parents. You're my father. I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? I asked gently. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Things have been difficult between Jeff and me lately. Even before this. He lost his job 3 months ago. This was news to me. His pharmaceutical sales job. He was talking about a new territory just last week at dinner. Amanda's face crumpled. He's been pretending to go to work, actually spending days driving around or sitting in coffee shops. We're behind on rent, maxed out credit cards. I had no idea until I found the past due notices. The pieces were falling into place. And that's why he suddenly needed his parents to move in here. They're all in financial trouble. She nodded miserably. His parents lost their apartment because they've been helping us with our rent. They couldn't pay their own. It's all connected. My anger toward Jeff grew, but I kept my voice calm for Amanda's sake. Why didn't you come to me? I would have helped you. Jeff wouldn't let me ask you. Said it would make him look like a failure, that we could handle it ourselves. She wiped tears away. Then he came up with this plan for his parents to move in here. I think he was hoping they could live rent-free, and then we could move in too when our lease is up next month, which we can't afford to renew anyway. So his solution was to take over my house, rather than asking for help directly or getting another job. I summarized. He's been applying for jobs. Nothing has worked out. She sounded defensive, though whether she was defending Jeff to me or to herself, I wasn't sure. Amanda, has Jeff been controlling in other ways? Making decisions without consulting you? Isolating you from friends or family? She looked startled by the question. I don't know. Maybe. He handles all our finances. He gets upset when I spend too much time with my school friends. Says we need to prioritize our marriage. Classic warning signs. I chose my next words carefully. Sweetheart, I'm concerned about you. Not just because of this situation with the house, but because of the pattern of behavior it suggests. What do you mean? Jeff made a major decision affecting your lives without consulting you fully. He lied to both you and his parents about what was agreed upon. When confronted, he became angry and tried to use your relationship with me as leverage. These are concerning behaviors. She didn't respond immediately, but I could see her processing what I had said. Finally, she spoke in a small voice. After we left here, he was so angry, yelling at his parents for not backing him up, yelling at me for not supporting him enough. He kicked a hole in our apartment wall. My alarm grew. Has he ever been physically aggressive toward you? No, she said quickly. Never. Just objects sometimes. When he's really frustrated. I wanted to push further but sensed she wasn't ready. Amanda, whatever you need, I'm here for you. Financial help, a place to stay, anything. She stood up abruptly. I should go. He'll be wondering where I am. I told him I was grocery shopping. Amanda, please, don't leave like this. I'm worried about you. I'm fine, Dad. Really. We'll figure it out. Her brave smile broke my heart. It was the same one she had used as a child when trying not to cry over a disappointment. I walked her to the door, feeling helpless. Call me anytime, day or night. Promise me. She nodded and gave me a quick hug before hurrying to her car. I watched her drive away with a growing sense of dread. This situation had escalated beyond a boundary dispute into something potentially dangerous for my daughter's well-being. 2 more days passed without contact. I left another voicemail for Amanda, which went unanswered. I considered driving to their apartment but worried that might make things worse. I was contemplating calling Amanda's best friend from college, Sarah, to check on her when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, Mr. Johnson. This is Officer Ramirez with the County Police Department. We have an Amanda Collins here who gave us your number. My heart stopped. Is she okay? What happened? She's physically fine, sir. There was a domestic disturbance call at her residence. Her husband has been taken into custody for destruction of property and making threats. She asked if you could come pick her up. I'll be right there, I said, already grabbing my keys. 20 minutes later, I was at the police station, where a shaken Amanda sat on a bench in the waiting area. When she saw me, she broke down in tears. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her like I had when she was small. It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you. The officer explained that neighbors had called 911 after hearing shouting and crashing sounds. When police arrived, they found Jeff destroying furniture and screaming threats about what he would do to Amanda and to me. Amanda had locked herself in the bathroom until police arrived. After completing paperwork and giving her statement, Amanda was free to leave. She was silent during the drive home, staring out the window. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked gently. "He found out I visited you," she said flatly. "Grocery store receipts didn't match what was in the fridge. He went through my car mileage, accused me of conspiring against him, said I had to choose between him and you." I gripped the steering wheel tightly, controlling my anger. "I'm so sorry, Amanda," he said. Her voice broke. "He said if I didn't help convince you to let his parents move in, he'd make sure I had nothing. No home, no money, no family. That he'd tell the school I was mentally unstable, that I hurt him, that I shouldn't be around children. Those are empty threats," I assured her. "He can't do any of that. I know. Rationally, I know. But in the moment, it was terrifying." She turned to look at me. "Dad, I think my marriage is over." "I think you might be right," I said gently. "And that's okay. You deserve to be safe and respected." When we arrived home, I showed her to the main guest bedroom, not in the West Wing, but adjacent to my room. She had a small overnight bag the police had allowed her to pack, but would need to get the rest of her things eventually. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow," I promised. "For now, just rest. You're safe here." She nodded, exhausted. "Thank you, Dad." After she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen making phone calls. First to Barbara, my lawyer, explaining the situation and asking her to begin protective measures for Amanda. Then to Thomas, who offered to accompany us if Amanda needed to retrieve more belongings from the apartment. Finally to Sarah, Amanda's friend, who promised to come by the next day to offer support. Around midnight, my phone rang again. Jeff's number. I declined the call, but he immediately called back. After the fourth attempt, I answered. "What do you want, Jeff? Where is my wife?" His words were slurred. He had been drinking. "She's safe. That's all you need to know. She's my wife. You had no right to take her." "I didn't take her. She chose to leave after you threatened her and destroyed your apartment." I kept my voice level despite my anger. "This is all your fault," he spat. "If you had just let my parents move in like any normal person would, none of this would have happened. Jeff, you need help. Professional help. I suggest you get it." "You think this is over?" He laughed bitterly. "It's just beginning, old man. I'll sue you for alienation of affection. I'll contest your will when you die. I'll make sure Amanda never speaks to you again. Goodbye, Jeff." I hung up and blocked his number. I checked on Amanda one last time before going to bed myself. She was asleep, tear tracks still visible on her cheeks. I gently pulled her door mostly closed and went to my own room, bone-tired but knowing sleep would be elusive. This had spiraled far beyond what I had anticipated when I stood my ground about the house. Now my daughter's marriage was likely ending, her husband was in custody, and his parents were presumably still in housing limbo. There would be difficult days ahead, but at least Amanda was safe. That was what mattered most. The weeks following the confrontation were challenging for Amanda. She filed for a temporary restraining order against Jeff, which was granted after the police incident. Barbara helped her begin divorce proceedings, though Jeff contested everything, dragging out the process. His parents eventually found a small apartment in a neighboring town, apparently realizing their son's plan had backfired spectacularly. Amanda stayed with me while sorting through the emotional and practical aftermath of her marriage's collapse. Each day seemed to bring new revelations about Jeff's deceptions. "He had a gambling problem," she told me one evening as we sat in the kitchen. 2 weeks had passed since she had moved in. Online sports betting. That's where a lot of our money went. I found the apps hidden on his phone after the police let me get more of my things. "That explains the financial troubles," I said, pouring her more tea. She nodded. "And there were loans I didn't know about. Payday advances. Even money borrowed from his coworkers before he got fired. He forged my signature on some of the paperwork. Barbara can help address that during the divorce," I assured her. "Make sure you're protected from his debts." I feel so stupid, she said, staring into her mug. How did I not see who he really was? You're not stupid, I countered firmly. Manipulative people are good at hiding their true nature from those closest to them. They show you what they want you to see. With Barbara's help, we secured Amanda's financial accounts and credit, ensuring Jeff couldn't access or further damage her finances. We also discovered he had been monitoring her emails and text messages through linked accounts, which we promptly secured. Sarah, Amanda's friend, proved invaluable during this time. She came by almost daily, sometimes just sitting with Amanda, other times taking her out for coffee or a walk to get her mind off things. She helped Amanda retrieve the rest of her belongings from the apartment, along with Thomas and his son, who volunteered their truck and muscle for the move. Jeff made several attempts to contact Amanda directly, despite the restraining order. When that failed, he began a campaign of manipulation through mutual friends and social media, painting himself as the victim of a controlling father-in-law who had poisoned his wife against him. Some acquaintances believed him, but those who truly knew Amanda stood by her. His parents called once, asking to speak with Amanda. I took the call and explained she wasn't ready to talk with them. To their credit, they seemed genuinely apologetic about their role in the situation. We didn't know what Jeff was really planning, Harold said. We thought this was all arranged properly. Please tell Amanda we're sorry for everything. I promised to relay the message, though I maintained a healthy skepticism about their claim of complete ignorance. They had, after all, been willing to move into someone's home without direct communication or consent. As Amanda began to heal, she also began to plan her next steps. The school where she taught was understanding about her situation, allowing her to take some personal time. Her students sent cards and drawings, which brightened her spirits considerably. I'm thinking about looking for my own place soon, she said one morning, about a month after moving in. I don't want to impose on you forever. You're not imposing, I assured her. Stay as long as you need. This is your home too. I know, but I think it would be good for me to have my own space again, to prove to myself that I can stand on my own. I understood her need for independence. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Financially too, if needed. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen in weeks. Thanks, Dad. I might take you up on that for the security deposit, teacher's salary and all. We began looking at apartments together, finding a small but charming one-bedroom unit just 10 minutes from both my house and her school. It was above her budget, but I insisted on helping with the difference. She moved in 6 weeks after leaving Jeff, taking some furniture from my guest rooms and a few special pieces from her childhood that I had stored in the attic. It's not much, she said as we finished setting up her new place. But it's mine. No one can take it away or threaten to kick me out. It's perfect, I told her, hanging a picture of her mother in the living room. Elaine would be so proud of you right now. The divorce proceedings continued, with Jeff fighting every step despite having few legal legs to stand on. His parents reached out to Amanda directly, apologizing and offering to testify about his behavior if needed. She thanked them but maintained distance, not yet ready to rebuild that relationship. Gradually, Amanda began reclaiming her life. She returned to teaching full-time, started having friends over to her new apartment, even joined a support group for women leaving controlling relationships, where she both received and gave valuable perspective. Our Sunday dinners resumed, but now at her place every other week, establishing a new tradition. Sometimes Sarah or other friends would join us. The conversation was lighter, more genuine than it had been during the later years of her marriage to Jeff. I keep thinking about how different things could have been, she said one Sunday evening as we cleaned up after dinner. If you had just given in that day, let his parents move in. I've thought about that too, I admitted. In the short term, it might have seemed easier, but in the long run, Jeff would have taken more and more, she finished for me. The house, your savings, everything. And I would have been trapped longer in a marriage that was already toxic. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the most important ones, I said, quoting something Elaine used to tell Amanda as a teenager. She smiled at the memory. Mom always knew. I wish she was here now. She would know exactly what to say to make everything better. She would say you're stronger than you know, that you'll rebuild better than before, and that she loves you no matter what. Amanda hugged me tightly. Thanks for being my rock through all this, Dad. I don't know what I would have done without you. As the months passed, the acute crisis gradually transformed into a new normal. Jeff eventually stopped contesting the divorce when his own financial problems became too pressing to ignore. The final papers were signed 8 months after that fateful Sunday dinner, when he had announced his parents were moving in. Amanda thrived in her independence, eventually dating again, though cautiously. I kept busy with my volunteer work and projects, finding new purpose in mentoring young men at the community center who lacked positive male role models. Harold and Diane reached out periodically, maintaining a respectful distance while expressing continued remorse for their part in the situation. Eventually, Amanda agreed to meet them for coffee, beginning a slow, careful rebuilding of that relationship on new, healthier terms. As for Jeff, we heard he had moved to another state after the divorce was finalized. According to mutual acquaintances, he was still blaming everyone but himself for what had happened, still convinced he had been wronged. Some people never learn the lessons life tries to teach them. Looking back, standing my ground that day was one of the hardest things I had ever done. It would have been easier in the moment to acquiesce, to avoid conflict, to be the nice father-in-law. But boundaries aren't about being nice. They're about being honest, clear, and respectful of yourself and others. In protecting my own boundaries, I had inadvertently helped Amanda recognize and establish hers. Sometimes the greatest gifts we give our children aren't material possessions or even unconditional support, but the example of self-respect and healthy limits. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Amanda invited me over for a special dinner. When I arrived, I found not just her but a small gathering of those who had supported us through the ordeal. Thomas and his wife, Sarah and her husband, 2 of Amanda's closest colleagues from school, Barbara, my lawyer who had become a friend through the process. "What's all this?" I asked, surprised by the crowd. Amanda smiled, looking more like her old self than I had seen in a long time. "An appreciation dinner for everyone who helped me rebuild my life this past year. Especially you, Dad." The table was beautifully set, with flowers from Elaine's garden that Amanda had asked to cut that morning. Photos from happier times decorated the apartment, including several of Amanda as a child with both Elaine and me. As we enjoyed the meal Amanda had prepared, conversation flowed naturally between people who had become connected through crisis and recovery. Thomas recounted how he had wanted to teach Jeff a lesson when he first heard what happened, but settled for helping move Amanda's belongings instead. Sarah shared how she had suspected something was wrong in Amanda's marriage long before the blow-up, but hadn't known how to broach the subject. "I've learned so much about boundaries this year," Amanda said as we finished dessert. "About standing up for myself. About recognizing red flags early instead of making excuses." "We all have," Barbara added. "I've actually changed how I counsel clients in potential domestic situations because of what I observed in your case." After dinner, as most guests were leaving, Amanda asked me to stay behind. She handed me a small, wrapped package. "What's this?" I asked. "Just open it," she urged. Inside was a framed photo of Elaine and me on the day we broke ground for our dream house. We were standing with our arms around each other, shovels in hand, beaming at the camera. A candid moment of pure joy captured forever. "I found it in Mom's old albums," Amanda explained. "I thought you might want it for the mantle." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's perfect. Thank you." "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about," she said, suddenly serious. "I've been thinking about the house. Your house. What about it?" Jeff was right about one thing, although his motives were all wrong. It is a lot of house for one person. She held up a hand as I started to respond. "I'm not saying you should sell it or move. It's your home. But I've been wondering if we might consider some renovations." "What kind of renovations?" I asked, curious. "Converting the West Wing into a separate apartment with its own entrance. Something you could legitimately rent out if you wanted to, or keep for family visits." or even for me to use someday in the distant future if we both needed the support. I considered the idea. That's actually quite practical. The wing already has its own bathroom and kitchenette. Wouldn't take much to make it fully independent, and it would be done properly, on your terms, with proper planning and boundaries. She smiled, the opposite of how Jeff tried to do things. I like it, I decided, and I know just the contractor. Me, Amanda laughed. Dad, you're retired, semi-retired, I corrected, and perfectly capable of overseeing a renovation. Maybe with some help from Thomas's construction company for the permits and heavy lifting. We spent the evening sketching rough plans, enjoying the positive creative energy after so many months of dealing with conflict and legal matters. It felt healing to be building something new together, both literally and figuratively. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey of the past year. What had started as a boundary violation had cascaded into a complete restructuring of our family. Painful as the process had been, we had emerged stronger, wiser, and ironically, closer than before. The renovation project began the following month. Thomas's son, who now ran the family business, provided professional plans and necessary permits. I supervised the work, enjoying being back on a job site, even if in a different capacity than before. Amanda stopped by regularly to check progress and offer design input. We finished just before the 1-year anniversary of that fateful Sunday dinner. The West Wing was now a fully functioning 1-bedroom apartment with its own entrance, small kitchen, and private patio overlooking Elaine's garden. It had a connecting door to the main house that could be locked from either side, respecting privacy while allowing for easy access when desired. So what now? Amanda asked as we stood in the completed space. Will you rent it out? Actually, I've been thinking about that. What would you think about Sarah's younger sister taking it? The one who just got accepted to nursing school nearby? She needs affordable housing, and I could use some company around the place without giving up my independence. That sounds perfect, Amanda agreed. Clear boundaries, mutual benefit, and helping someone in need. Everything the original situation wasn't. The arrangement worked beautifully. My new tenant, Lisa, was respectful of my space while providing a youthful energy to the house. We established clear terms from the beginning, signing a proper lease with reasonable rent that helped her as a student while giving me some extra income and, more importantly, the satisfaction of knowing the space was being well used. Amanda continued thriving in her independence. She was promoted to lead teacher at her school and started taking classes toward an administrative credential. Her confidence grew steadily, and she began mentoring other women going through similar situations to what she had experienced. Looking back, I realized that standing firm on my boundaries that day had ripple effects far beyond what I could have imagined. It wasn't just about keeping unwanted house guests out of my home. It was about modeling self-respect, demonstrating that love doesn't require sacrifice of dignity, and showing that true family supports rather than exploits each other. The most valuable lesson from the whole ordeal wasn't about property rights or family obligations. It was about the courage to enforce boundaries, even when it's difficult, even when it might temporarily damage relationships, because boundaries based on self-respect ultimately protect everyone involved, even those who initially resist them. I often think about what Elaine would say about how everything unfolded. I like to believe she would be proud of how I handled things, how Amanda grew through the adversity, how we emerged stronger as a family, albeit a smaller one. Life rarely gives us clear villains and heroes. Jeff wasn't entirely evil, just deeply flawed and unwilling to face his own shortcomings. His parents were caught between loyalty to their son and basic decency. Amanda was blinded by love until the veil was forcibly lifted, and I was just an old man trying to protect what was mine while supporting those I loved. In the end, the house remains my home, but its meaning has evolved. It's no longer just a shrine to my past with Elaine, but a living space that continues to adapt and serve its purpose as circumstances change, much like life itself. So I ask you, have you ever had to stand your ground to protect your boundaries? How did it turn out? Sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most necessary changes. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share in the comments below about a time when saying no was the right thing to do, even when it was hard. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, healthy boundaries make healthy relationships. Until next time, take care of yourselves and those you love, but never at the expense of your own dignity and self-respect.